So a warm welcome to everyone. Good morning, afternoon and evening, wherever you are around the globe. Here for this session, The Digital Divide, what finance leaders need to know about AI and automation. Now, this is the most popular session in this year's CFO Connect Summit, with most people signed up. So you're in the right place. This is where you need to be. And just to remind you, CFO Connect is a global community. There's over 10,000 finance leaders here. It's powered by Spendesk. The guys who are with me here, we're members of this society or this community. And if you're not a member, then I urge you to join and sign up and join the rest of us there. So before we start, just two things I'm going to ask you all. The first is to put down your phone and to shut down any other screens you have open on your PC. Give us your full attention over the next 45 minutes because you know that multitasking doesn't work. So to get most out of your time with us, please shut down everything else you've got open and stay with us. And the second thing I want to ask you is to please ask questions as we go, and of course at the end as well. You'll see on the right hand side of your screen, if everything works right, there's some little symbols there. There's a symbol which is a question mark. That is where you can leave us questions. The more questions you give us, I'm going to pick them up and use them throughout this session because we want this to be interactive. Rather than being a presentation by my three colleagues here, we'd rather it be a conversation with you. So please drop questions in there. I'll pick them up. I'll fire them to the panel, and that way things should work well. In the meantime, there's also a chat there. If you want to let us know as we start where you're from, I can see some people saying New York City, someone from the UK, Kenya. Brilliant. Drop in the chat for us where you're from. That's always good to know where you are around the world. Germany, Dubai, there we go. Some stuff coming through. That way you can see that we're live. We're not recorded. And we'll start now with some introductions as I see everyone coming in. Brilliant. Loads of people from all over the place. Really good. My name is Peter McKenzie. I'm the chairman of this panel. I'm going to be the quietest member, hopefully, because my three panelists are going to do all the talking. I'm the general manager of a real estate company down in Spain called Anticipa. We run about 10 billion euros worth of assets, and we're owned by Blackstone, which is the world's largest PE firm. Prior to doing this general manager job, I spent 6 years here as the CFO. So that's my connection as CFO. And prior to that, I spent 20 years at Citigroup as CFO for various businesses across Europe. So that's me. I'm fascinated by AI. I'm by no means an expert, but luckily I have three people with me on this panel who know a lot more than me. So I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves. And just because I see you on my right, Michelle, I'm going to ask you, please, to introduce yourself first, who you are and where you're from, your background. You're on mute. You can just, there we go.
I'm Michelle. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Anrok. We help software companies sell across borders, so with sales tax and VAT, all the way from monitoring, tax calculations, filing, and remittance. In terms of AI, I used to be investing as a venture capitalist in AI back in 2017. So I've been following this space for a long time. I also have a finance background and started my career at Goldman Sachs in New York.
Okay, thank you very much. A nice varied background for you there. Thank you. So Nitesh, as I see you next on the screen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
Sure, thanks for having me. Nitesh Sharan, I'm the CFO of SoundHound AI. We're a conversational voice AI company that's been in the AI space for over 20 years. Our mission is to voice power the world. We believe voice will be an increasingly important modality by which humans interact with technology, and that, along with other ways of interacting, will completely change how we communicate with everything and anything around us. I spent 20 years prior to joining SoundHound, which I did a couple of years ago at major mega cap companies. I was at Hewlett Packard for a long time and then Nike. And prior to that, I did a little bit of consulting. Again, thanks for having me.
Perfect. Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for coming. And finally, Mohammad, if you can let us know a little bit about yourself as well.
Hi, I'm Mohammad. I'm from Iran, studied in Illinois University, then moved to Germany. I'm a financial advisor at the European Commission, working on the due diligence and every aspect of the financing for the EIC and EIT funds in Europe, mainly Western Europe. I'm assigned in. And also I'm a director of the Founder Institute, the world's largest pre-seed accelerator. We are running the program regionally in 5 German cities with an amazing team since 2010. And I've been a venture capitalist since 2016 as an angel or as an institutional investor. I'm glad to be here.
Perfect. Thank you so much to the three of you. So let's get started. And just to sort of set the scene a little bit, I mean, I probably, like many other people here, I've been going to CFO finance conferences for a long time. And the theme of AI and RPAs, automation, but especially AI, has been on the agenda for some time. But I think this year, things changed a little bit, because at the beginning of the year, suddenly ChatGPT hit our world. It was suddenly very public. And everyone sort of thought, okay, this is something new. The world is changing, and obviously finance, CFOs, we're going to be affected too. And to give you a couple of bits of news that I looked at, just to give us some context, I saw that Fortune magazine, they had a headline recently they put out there saying that 95% of tech CFOs believe that generative AI will boost productivity, but only 5% say it's going to be used this year in finance. So only 5% are saying it's actually going to be useful in 2023. That's one bit of news. On the other hand, I saw that Sturpy, which is a Denver-based software company, have released a tool. They call it Chat CFO. And this is, it's in alpha testing. It's not a plugin, but they reckon it's a proper personal AI CFO that you can ask 24/7. You can ask about your company's finances. It'll tell you whether you can invest, not invest. It's like the CFO you need. You don't need a real CFO. You have this virtual one. So there seems to be tools that are already working. Other people are saying AI is not here. So the first question really is, has AI actually arrived in finance? And if so, what impact have you seen? So I'm going to start with you, Michelle. What has AI really arrived?
Yeah, good question. To frame this, I would say we're only just at the beginning at what LLMs can do. So LLM is a large language model. And if you think about the evolution of LLMs, when ChatGPT first came on the scene, the LLM under hood was GPT 3.5. So this was a fine-tuned version of GPT 3. And so if you interacted with that model, you probably saw the progress between GPT 3.5 and GPT 4, which is now powering ChatGPT today. And that jump wasn't huge, but it was meaningful. If you zoom out, GPT 2 was released in 2019. GPT 3 was actually, that model was released in 2020. There was just no chat interface for us to interact with it, but those papers were published. And then 3.5 is the version that we interacted with. So if you think about the step function jump that we will get with the next model, most of us haven't even experienced what that looks like. So first off, I think we're only just beginning, and a lot of the questions around has it arrived or not will depend on the next generation of model. In terms of what I think has arrived, operationally, there's a lot of things you can be using in your role to use ChatGPT or Claude to help augment your day-to-day. And so personally, I use Claude every day in my day-to-day work. Everything from thinking about how 30, 60, and 90 days should go in terms of thinking about outlines for board decks. In terms of its ability to do math, maybe not so great just yet, but operationally, internally, there's a lot of interesting use cases. That said, something that I'd be excited to talk about later is thinking through 2024 planning, and from a product perspective, how finance might want to guide their teams through the transition. But operationally, I think there's a lot of exciting things that people can be doing today.
Okay, thank you very much. So you're already seeing some use on the operational side. I'm going to turn to you next, Nitesh, to add to that. You're actually in the AI space. You said that very clearly. So I guess you're going to be telling us, yes, it is already here. But from a finance perspective, how do you see AI being used? Is it really that widespread, or is it still, Michelle said, the beginning phase?
Well, if it's okay, I just want to add to, I totally agree with everything Michelle said, and maybe just to put a little color commentary on the exponential pace that it's improving. In the shifts from GPT 3.5 to 4, there were different examinations and tests that the AI was doing. And one was the bar exam. I think it took the California or New York bar exam, which is, you can imagine one of the most data ingesting types of exercises that humans have to do. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was something like 3.5 performed at the 20th percentile and 4% performed at like the 95th percentile. And in that short period of time is one example. And there are many, many others. Tests that they did showcase just how quickly things are moving here. So I think that speed element is something, if we had this conference in another month, we would be telling you new data points of how quickly things are moving here. And your CFO assist may actually be in some companies. People are using that as a CFO. Who knows how quickly that's going to change. But if I were to broaden, there's actually an early pioneer in the AI space who had this line that when I heard it really resonates. And it was this concept of the AI effect, which is as soon as it works, no one calls it AI anymore. And it kind of illuminates that things get pretty pervasive. What you think is an advancement, once you're kind of accustomed to it, it's like, okay, cool. We've been playing with ChatGPT for a bit. We have our own kind of AI assistant, and you're first blown away by it. But after working with it for a bit, you just take it as normal course. And I think across beyond finance, although finance I've always thought was simply a tool to do great things in the world, and you help companies operate. So finance is a tool to help in drug discovery and managing infrastructure and complex modeling. We're seeing advancements in self-driving vehicles, computer visioning, and natural language. This stuff is already out there. And within finance, more specifically to your question, Peter, across financial planning, budgeting and reporting, working capital management, predictive analytics, M&A analysis, and sourcing, there's a lot of advancements going on where you basically, yes, can get productivity. I always think of it more so as you get new insights. Humans are just limited in our capacity to do things. And now using tools, you asked everybody to put down their phone, but even though their phone is down, there's still a lot of stuff going on their phone. And people can pick that up and catch it right when they're done with this. So I think I completely agree with Michelle. We're just getting started. There's going to be a lot more advancements happening. And I think they're going to happen at an even more accelerated pace than what we've seen.
Okay, thank you. No, that's very clear. So you're both in agreement there. It's here. It's growing almost exponentially. As you said, in a month's time, maybe we'll see even more stuff, and it's just going to keep coming at us like that. Mohammad, are you in agreement? Is that how you see the world?
Yes. It's been a very long time that AI has dominated this space, even from starting the point of ChatGPT. Around 9-10 months is eternity in this space. And especially robotic process automations are already transforming the back office functions by automating repetitive tasks and making the operational risks better, freeing the staffs for something more valuable. That's the case. We have to embrace, the keyword is embracing this change. It's not here to destroy humanity. It's here to let us go and do something more sophisticated. And however, more advanced applications like the predictive analysis have a very long way to go to be entirely dominated by AI. We still need the human insights that has been in the industry, has saw the ups and downs in real world to decide, to make final decisions. But they are here to help us better understand. Instead of taking days or maybe weeks to prepare some financial reports, we can do it in a few hours and then give it to the decision makers and let them make the right decisions. And as a VC, I've seen an increase in investment in AI-based fintech startups very dramatically. Not since last year, it started back in 18. And that we saw that people were seeing the potential of this. And then the skepticism was very higher. At that time, I was in the US. The American market was very good for it. But since I moved to Germany, I see there is still a skepticism about innovation, not for AI. That's the problem of the economy here, that and there's always not fast enough to adapt to the changes. So, but in Munich, we have seen a great hub of AI startups that are leveraging the knowledge, the underlying knowledge, not just building some SaaS based on that. That's just a call to GPT, real AI. So it is here. We are leveraging it, and our main concern should be where we want to direct it toward.
Okay. No, I agree. I think you're all on the same wavelength there, and maybe we'll come back to that sort of mindset shift that people need to have later, because obviously I think there's skepticism, there's a little bit of maybe resistance, a little bit of fear as well around the whole topic. Maybe we can come back and touch on that in a second. I can see some questions already coming through. I am reading them. I will get to those in a second. I'm very keen to use your questions. But I have a couple of other things I just wanted to draw out from what the guys have already said in their introductions. And maybe, Michelle, going back to you, because you just talking about the sort of, down to earth, practical use of some of these tools. And you mentioned very much operational uses. Perhaps if you've got some finance examples, that'd be great as well. I noted down, you said a tool called Claude. And excuse my ignorance, I had no idea. I know ChatGPT and some of these other, I had not heard of that. So maybe you can give us a bit of an idea of how you're practically using, AI today.
Yes. So there are two leading large language models today. One is OpenAI's ChatGPT, and Claude is Anthropic, which is another lab's version of ChatGPT. I'd say those are the two leading ones. And in terms of how, especially finance, should think about using the software today, it's just like going through any other procurement process. Your team might want to look at the SOC 2 report, for example. Your security team might want to look at how the data is managed. So before you even think about start using it today, I'd say check with your team and what the procurement process looks like. For personal use cases, these are tools you can sign up today and it's free. And I think the more you use the tool, the more use cases you can really unleash. There's definitely an experience component behind it. And I'd say the biggest skill that one should focus on honing is how to prompt the models better. And what I mean by prompting is with these chat models, you don't need to fine tune the model to your use case. One of the big innovations with these large language models is this concept called few shot or zero shot, which was essentially, you no longer have to fine tune the model to the use case. You can give it enough context in text for it to be able to be useful for your use case in one go. That said, when you do give the model a prompt and context, more is better. Give the model a sense of who you are as a persona. So one tip is, instead of just saying, hi, I'm a finance leader at a startup, you can say, I'm the controller at a Series B top tier startup in X geography, like X, Y, and Z company. And then the model will have more context to tailor its messaging to all of the data it ingested that are around controllers for your type of company. And then the second tip I'd leave you with is on how to actually use the model in practice is don't expect the first answer to be the final answer. I think iterating, just like how you'd polish a draft, go back and forth with the model and ask it to critique its own answer, or maybe say how would my CFO critique this response? And again, give the model a description of who your CFO is, and that would give an even more detailed response.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Very, very, very useful tips, I think, for people to consider when they're using these models live in their businesses. But perhaps I can just, Nitesh, just going on what Michelle said. She said, play with these models, use these models, try them out. And I'm going to come to one of the questions now and just link it, because Stefan's asked a question about, which I think is quite common for many of the finance people who are in the room, which is, I can't really use some of these models still because they're open. I think at the very beginning, earlier in the year, Samsung had an issue where people were using, for example, ChatGPT, and they suddenly found they were sharing data because it is what it is. It's open AI. It's not closed. And here they're sort of saying, well, Stefan asked, how can we use this technology if it's open? How do we overcome that challenge? How can we play with these things without being just generic and not actually using it for real business applications?
Yeah, I think it's the privacy and data concerns are real. And let me add a couple on Michelle's statements that will be related to this. The other thing that when you work with these models to note, there are two concepts related to, you have to worry about their accuracy. There's this concept of hallucination. So because it's sort of a black box, it's ingesting a lot of data, giving you answers, leveraging information that it sees historically, it has a tendency to bias. And there's settings you can create in these things for how sort of either accurate or loose the answers will be. But there is this concept of hallucinations. I'm from the US here. I'm a sports fan. When I was playing with it early on, I asked a simple question of who won the most college basketball championships, and it said University of Kentucky's won the most with 8, and North Carolina number 2 with 6, and UCLA third with 11. And he said, well, which number is higher, 8, 6, or 11? And it will go back and forth. You'll have this amazing conversation. So my analogy a little bit is, and by the way, it'll say, oh, I'm sorry. Actually, you're right. It's UCLA. And then by the way, you can ask, well, how do you know I was asking about men's basketball championships? And it's like, oh, you're right. Actually, women's University of Connecticut at 11. So there's a lot of, and there's also this concept of model drift that, between even the advancements of GPT 3.5 to 4, in some functions, such as math functions, there was some performance deterioration. So I think, tread carefully with just going to your, free app and playing around with it. Definitely, I'm sure a lot of companies have thought, how cool would it be if I just threw in my financials and got it to write my earnings announcement or, earnings script? That's a dangerous proposition, particularly with the sensitivity of data. But I think over time, you'll see more private use cases. You'll have enterprise-ready applications. So that's going to shift pretty quickly, too. I do think as a general assistant, if you had to create a generic process or control, we have a new SOX control you have to create to sort of use it as a template. I think there are many, many applications. I think that's really generative AI. Again, this is sort of the latest breakthrough of a culmination of many, many breakthroughs. And frankly, again, whether it's in planning, it's in, scenario analysis. I think on some of the operational sides, payables management, receivables management, we're already seeing real good advancements in understanding fraud, credit risks, et cetera. There's a lot of applications that are out there. But I think being very thoughtful and sensitive, we are stewards of very sensitive information generally in the corporate finance side. So just going and throwing some sensitive numbers in an open access API makes no sense.
Okay, so you're sort of recommending that there'll be more closed models that people will be able to, sort of sign up to and actually play with these tools, but not necessarily the open AI solutions, more closed prop tools or spaces where people could actually use these tools, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, effectively. Yeah. I think especially, and there are tools that are already out there, and these are, again, every week there's new tools that are coming, large foundation models that are being built. There are going to be more specific use cases for specific content domains. We're building them, for example, in entry into food ordering. We're doing it in broader customer service. In the finance application, you mentioned a company that's creating a CFO assist. I think these things are going to happen rapid fire.
Okay, no, brilliant. No, so I think that gives us, and you're giving us some good sort of, between you and Michelle, some good tips and some good warnings, right, about how some of these models you have to work with them and play with them. They're not 100% accurate, or they may give you back what you ask for. So you have to be careful what you ask for. Make sure you're asking the right thing to the models. Perfect. Mohammad, if I can just move maybe the conversation slightly into the sort of the personal, the HR side, because I know you have also an HR background or an HR hat. Obviously, a lot of these this change, this shift to using more automated tools, but AI in particular, has an impact on the type of people that we need in finance functions. How do you see how we can sort of manage that change? What's your view on the type of people that need to be in finance, and can we sort of cross people over from where they are today to this new future?
At first, I want to add to what Michelle and Nitesh said. They shared a lot of great insights because it's not just, don't think about AI as a use case, just ChatGPT typing, give me business idea for 2023. It's not going to work out. There are many language models out there. GPT-4, ChatGPT, Llama, Solar, Google Palm, and many more to come. So use them if it's possible for you. If your work requires a lot of things to generate content, and try different models to see which one works better for you, and to write the right prompt, because it's gonna just give you a content based on the framework you gave it. And we have to have a good perspective on using them, and that's where your question comes in about how you consider people in this scene. And there's a shift in the skill sets required with the finance sector. So traditional roles were focused on manual data processing, number crunching, are getting automated right now. And there's an increasing demand for finance professionals to adapt in data science and machine learning and AI. Maybe 10 years ago, they didn't think, okay, I need these tools. These are just some technical stuff. People will take care of it in another department. But right now, everyone should use that. From the perspective of the management, I see it more in Europe that there's a resistance. Executives using any language model for anything consider it as a cheating. I'm paying you 100K to do the job. And sometimes, employees are a bit cheesy to just put a prompt, and you after working with a while with language models, when you read them, you can understand it was not written by a human. You don't even need to use Zero GPT or other similar tools to see it's not a human written thing. So it's best to embrace it, open up in the executive levels, to even maybe hold workshops for the employees to say, okay, this is a new tool. This is not a substitute for your knowledge, your expertise. We hired you and you're responsible for you. So opening up to the employees that they are not fighting with a bot. But a minor challenge is that sometimes they are fighting. When you see the numbers, especially in the US, there are a lot of laid-offs based on, at least companies claim to, because they substituted their employees. So it's a challenging thing from the HR perspective. How much should we invest in upskilling and shifting our current employees that we invested in them? Whether it was the investment through finding them, hiring them, onboarding them, the mistakes they made in our company to learn, our money that they wasted to get to this point, and we're just gonna let them go. So, and other case is to which parts we want to assign to our employees, which roles we want to hire more. Maybe we now need more data analysts to join our finance team, to just know how to use the tools. AI algorithms are sophisticated, financial terms are very sophisticated, especially in the VC scene. And doing the due diligence is not something that you upload the file to GPT-4 and ask it, okay, is it a good investment? Should I go in? That's not going to work out anytime soon. Even with this pace of development of different language models, I'm not seeing this part coming. And that's the role of a principal or an investment manager. And simultaneously, hiring the strategies should be adjusted to attract new talent. So before I mentioned about we have to open up with our current employees, how to upskill them, how to help them. And also we have to change our pipeline of the talent and coming into the company, and to first attract the right people, and second, assign them to the right place in the company, give them the flexibility, the opportunity to grow. And this is a new field. We can't expect someone having 10 years of experience in language models. No, it's unrealistic. And we have to look beyond the traditional finance backgrounds and see it through, try to find an applicant that with a minimum investment of, for example, even 3 months of education through the company, fully financed by the company, they will be a star employee in AI. So one, in the hiring process modification, first, we need to try to attract the right people. And second, consider people that are entirely irrelevant. They haven't even opened up ChatGPT, but they have a very good potential and tendency to adapt and learn and to jump into this part. Because if we do this, we are going to see a huge jump into the performance of the company in a relatively very short period of time. And the last point in this regard is the culture. Okay, you did some workshops, some talking for the current employees, you made some modification to your pipeline into new people. Now there is a between the lines. This is the culture that's speaking louder than anything. You have to let people test, connect with each other, and ensure them, and really not lying to them, ensure them that, okay, these tools are not your competitors. We want you to help use them. We want you to be with us in the long term. That's why we are embracing these new technologies, because eventually they are the tools. We are here for you.
Okay, so you touched on quite a lot of things there. I mean, at the end, you said the culture of the whole company, I presume, not just finance, needs to, as you said right at the beginning, embrace this change and not be too fearful, because it's not always going to be replacing people. And then you spoke specifically to the profile. Some people may be able to convert into this sort of new AI user. Maybe others can't, or they're not going to be able to make that jump. I guess especially some of the older people in the team, or those not open to this type of change. I guess taking what Mohammad said, Michelle, and I think you've been talking from an operational perspective all along. Have you seen within your own company or in your own finance area, there's been that transformation? And being realistic as well, although I think we're expecting finance teams to work with AI, there will be a reduction in the need for headcount. I mean, that's a reality as well. I mean, how have you managed that? And have you seen that transformation? Are you requiring new profiles to be hired, or are you able to convert people?
Yeah. So everyone at Anrok has either a ChatGPT or Claude account. It's something we encourage folks to use on a daily basis. Sometimes if someone comes to me with a proposal, I often ask, have you asked Claude yet? Or have you asked ChatGPT yet? And gotten that feedback. And that's a really good forcing function to get people starting to use the technology, because it really is a skill of like how to prompt these models. In terms of, what are we actually using these models for today? I think this goes back to Nitesh's early point, is we're really only just beginning. And so the most useful thing is really to have a framework on like what tools to look out for. And most of them, the interesting AI products, use LLMs under the hood. So LLMs are good at two things: content generation and data synthesis. For a finance leader, content generation isn't a huge part of our day-to-day. It could be useful for fleshing out a strategic memo. Let's say you're acquiring a company and you're making a case. Maybe having some feedback on that is useful. Not only you can use some of the chat bots, you might want to have that content generation experience in something like a word processing document. So Notion has something called Notion AI, which is quite popular. So that's like one tool you could explore in the content generation space. Perhaps a more useful trait of LLMs is that data synthesis piece. Because the model is still a baby, right? It's not that smart just yet, and it's not that great with numbers. I would be hesitant of trusting too much, not just because of privacy issues, but because of just capability issues on the data synthesis. One example of something I've tried is giving the model paid social statistics and asked it to analyze what is the ROI on LinkedIn, right? And I think this is something sometimes finance keeps an eye on like marketing spend. So those are the things you could try to use these models for in terms of data synthesis. In terms of actual products, I think a really exciting kind of data synthesis tool is Glean AI. This is more a company-wide product, so it might be hard to try on your own, but it helps with internal search and a way to like surface answers internally. And that uses large language models to bring together a lot of data and synthesize what is often living between Drive and Notion and Docs and all these different Slack and all these different tools.
Okay, so that's interesting because you spoke a little bit there about moving or having a process where the AI is looking at various, if I understand it correctly, looking at various places where information can sit and reside and using all that information together. That implies to me, again, I'm not as an expert like yourselves, but that you require some sort of integration tool, or you need a data warehouse or something where that information sits. There needs to be like almost like an IT sort of push behind to be able to do that. I mean, if their tools are web-based, I guess it can just go in and find them. But if you have an ERP and you have more legacy systems, there probably needs to be some investment in IT to be able to use some of these tools. Would that be right?
That's right. So Glean is a corporate build out. So you need to install it company wide, and it's not a one day lift implementation.
Okay. Perfect. No, and I think moving on to that point a little bit more, because we're talking about the CFO and finance, but perhaps going sort of more strategic, or taking a more strategic view, Nitesh, does this sort of change, because it implies changes in culture, as Mohammad said, it implies changes in processes, operations, it affects the business side, automations across the whole enterprise. Does that change the role of the CFO as a strategic sort of partner in the business?
I would say that the role of the CFO has always evolved, and it's sort of ebbed and flowed, and there have been different sort of sub functions that have had prioritization, but absolutely the strategic element of the CFO has I think greatly been expanding recently, and this only sort of unlocks, I'd say, more of how the CFO could play that strategic partnership role. Before I go there, though, just thinking through what we were just talking about, sometimes the role of the CFO expands into the CIO. And also just as a steward of risk management, I think it is imperative as we're utilizing more of these tools that companies establish policies of the usage, which tools to go to. There's a cost associated with these things that at scale, they can be pretty meaningful. So as a sidebar, let me go there. But back to your question on the strategic partnership. So, I actually think when you pivot off of just, hey, I got to get the books closed and I got to do forecasting and I got to manage receivables and payables and capital allocation, so forth. If you back up to, again, finance as being a tool to help deliver some value that your business is about. And when we're talking about the major disruption that is happening and that will continue to happen at exponential scale, I personally think that CFOs need to think very broadly. You need to look at your particular industry or business, because every business is going to be impacted. It just won't be uniformly. You got to look at both the opportunities, the risks, think of what the threats are, the new possibilities. By the way, just to double click and maybe not to get too esoteric, but from a mental model standpoint, there is a real difference between thinking linearly and exponentially or parabolically. These technology shifts that have happened in waves, and before you know it, it's taken over. So we believe this new generative AI era is as disruptive as the internet era in the 90s and the new disruption that happened and everybody threw on a .com or needed a web page. It's as disruptive as the mobile revolution. This is absolutely happening. And if you wait 4 years to figure out how you're going to play in it, you're going to be behind the curve. So I do think there's a lot of areas in how you do decision-making, et cetera. But the bottom line is just AI needs to be understood in your particular manifestation that's relevant to your business. I won't assume that everybody's industry is, affected the same way, but it is a major disruptor. And, it can be good or bad depending on how you approach it. It can be good or bad depending on whether and how you harness its power.
To build off Nitesh's point about how it comes in waves, if you're sitting a month from now after this session and think, where are my finance tools with AI? I don't see any. I think another way to think about this punctuated equilibrium concept that Nitesh and I are trying to express is think about how long it takes to train one of these LLMs. They are highly capital intensive, they take a lot of compute, and they often take weeks, if not months, to train before the team can test and say okay, this is now ready. And so it's been, I'd say 9 months, right, since GPT-4 was released. We don't know when the next model will be released, but a lot of the progress that we get in between the models is people thinking about how do I build applications around the LLM? And that won't unlock everything we need in finance. We might just need to wait for that next smarter model. The other point Nitesh made that I really liked was this idea that the CFO wears a lot of other strategic hats. And one that I think of frequently is this idea of being a capital allocator internally. How do we invest the dollars we have in the most productive way? So for folks going into 2024 planning, if your team is interested to build products around AI and LLMs, the few things that I would keep in mind is, one, if they're asking to build out a giant team, think about is that the right level of experiment to try? I was talking to a CFO who was saying that the CEO wanted, they're a 200-person company, and the CEO wanted 30 people headcount dedicated to their AI effort. And the question is, have you even tried to have 2 people go away for 3 weeks and build a prototype and try that out first? So number one is people get really excited and there's a lot of pressure to perform, but making sure that the right level of experimentation is there and it's not a giant bet. So that's number one. The second thing that might come up in planning is your team might be excited to build an LLM themselves. And for some businesses, it might make sense, but for many businesses, that capital just won't be that productive. It's very expensive to build an LLM. And even after you build the model, there is something called an inference cost. So when you type in ChatGPT and you say, hello, this is my question, the model is doing some computation in the background, even after it's trained. So there's compute in training, but there's also compute in coming up with what is the most probabilistic likely response. And that's what ChatGPT returns. That's called inference cost. If you train your own model, inference costs tend to be higher for smaller models than there are for larger models. There are lots of other variables too. It depends on how long they're trained and so forth. But it's very likely that if your team decides to build an LLM, they won't be on the cutting edge, and it will still be more expensive than what the next generation of models will be in the future. So those are 2 things to think about as well as the finance org gets brought into strategic conversations.
Okay, so you're sort of saying leverage what already exists rather than trying to build your own models. It makes more sense, right? Unless you're a big organization, I guess.
Most of the time, yeah. No.
Excellent. Okay, I'm aware of time because we've been talking and this has been so interesting. I think we're running, and I just want to. I've tried to touch on some of the questions as we've gone. I think Nitesh several times has actually listed some of the applications that definitely are out there already. Because some of the questions around where do we see this, and you've already gone through accounts payable and fraud management and credit risk management, and some of the things where I think even for some years now, some of this technology has existed, although we're talking something slightly more than that in this conversation. But there's one thing here that maybe, Mohammad, you'd like to comment on. There's a question from Anonymous who asked about security risks. I don't know if you have any view on this. What are the security risks in the use of AI, especially in finance? What do you see there?
There are, at least in Europe, we have the European Commission that does too much regulation, unfortunately, and for the customer side, it's good. So in general, we are protecting the data and the processing level, but the corporations are still liable. And it depends on the privacy strategy on how much do you use that. So how much data you're going to give away. And until now, although I use a lot of language models myself on a daily, day-to-day basis, but I don't use it for data analysis, anything that has data, for two reasons. One, the privacy is still unclear. You can get caught. Second, it's usually inaccurate. So it's a waste of resources and misleading. Yes, you can use it for some guidance, okay, how to analyze it, but usually even a simple calculation of a ROI, P2E, it's usually incapable of doing that. So if your organization, if you are a person, usually there is not that much concern. And hopefully the regulatory part of your government, wherever you are on the globe, is trying to help you. And second, if you are a company, have a strategy. How much? And again, embrace it. Maybe if even you are a small team, you don't have to be a big bank for this. You are a small startup with 10 people, open up a new page on Notion. Usually startups use that, and put language models on that, and even put some YouTube videos or make your own on onboarding your new people. Give them guidelines. Okay, these are the prompts that are very useful. You don't have to write that. Because usually good prompts are either long or in different steps, because the short and vague prompt is not going to produce good results. And give them guidelines not to include in the prompts and do it manually.
Excellent. Okay, good advice. We've got a minute left. So if you just want to give me like one line of advice, just like Mohammed just gave us, that you would leave with the CFOs watching us now, what would you say, Nitesh? What would you say? One line of advice. What do they need to know?
Oh, just lean in heavily. Learn as much as you can. Get into this. Don't put your head in the sand.
Okay, don't wait. Don't put your head in the sand. Lean in. Michelle, what would you say?
Building on that, you have to learn how to prompt. Try it. It's quick. It's easy. Just try it.
Learn how to prompt. I love your thing.
And if you don't use Twitter for how to prompt, and prompt engineering. It's not a real thing, but search it on Twitter. There are many threads that help you write the right prompts.
Okay, search on. It's not called Twitter. It's called Z or something now, right? But anyway, search on whatever that platform is. Is that your last bit of advice, Mohammed? We're going with that. Okay, so prompting. I also like your advice. Have you asked ChatGPT or Claude? Have you asked it? I like that. That's what I'm going to say to my team tomorrow when they ask me the next question. Fantastic, guys. Look, we're on the time. If I'm not mistaken, we've done the 50 minutes. It's flown by. So that's a fantastic session. I'm sorry we didn't answer all those questions, but there was so much content there. Thank you for staying with us. I think it's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you, Nitesh. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Mohammed, for your interventions. I've been fascinated. I've learned a lot. Just to let the rest of you know before you go, we now have a networking event. So what you need to do is scroll down the screen and you can join a networking event for finance professionals and continue to meet other people around the globe. So thank you to everyone for attending. That was a brilliant session, and see you next year, I hope. Thanks a lot.
Goodbye. Thank you, everyone.